OK， 那么接下来的时间呢，这个 Harry and Roy，Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
两位大帅哥哈。Where's Harry?
你好，我的这边。
Oh, Harry
hi.
can speak Cantonese.
I can't see
Hi.
you.
Oh, sorry. Here you go.
Hey.
Wow. Okay. No
my
surprise,
beautiful Auckland background.
Woohoo.
Hi guys.
Cool, so handsome. Hey, I have a question for Harry.
Go for it.
Yep. Are you married?
Not yet.
Okay, good. Everyone, yeah. 大家听到吗？
Maybe after tonight.
OK， 我不话多说了，来交给你了 ，Roy。
OK， 非常感谢我们第一位重量级嘉宾 Charles， 非常谢谢你，然后也感谢可爱又帅气的燕，太精彩了。我个人感觉是听下来受益良多，特别是在个人发展和成长方面，我可能都会想要就是结束以后去找 Charles 来 coach 一下。All right， 接下来这位要跟大家进行分享的重量级嘉宾呢，是一位资深猎头和人力资源师Harry 在他的分享里面会从应聘前 CV 和 cover letter 的准备，到如何 reach out 摄取更多的一个适合的工作职位、潜在职位，到面试的准备和面试中的技巧，甚至到薪酬的谈判 ，Harry 都会为我们进行一个深入浅出的一个讲解。我相信不管是在校学生也好，或者是有一定工作经验、有跳槽计划的朋友，都能够从这个 Harry 的分享里面这个学到不少的有用的这个信息和知识。All right, hi Harry, how are you?
Good, thanks, and nice to meet everyone tonight.
Yeah, I just like to thank you so much for contributing your time and sharing your professional opinions and experience with us and support our like LGBT people in New Zealand. Thank you so much, which I believe will be super beneficial for our audience, for our members.
Great, and thank you, China Pride Committee, Ricky, and everyone else for inviting me tonight to share a bit more insight on the recruitment process for New Zealand.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. So first, would you please, to briefly introduce yourself a little bit?
Absolutely. happy to do so, and I'll share my PowerPoint presentation as well, if that's okay.
Sure, of course. Go ahead, please.
Can everyone see the screen?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you again. Just a quick introduction on myself. I'm originally from Malaysia, and I've been in New Zealand for the past almost 6 years. I am gay, so I think obviously for me, it's a good chance to relate somewhat with some of the experiences that most of you on this webinar may face at some stage with their careers. I've been in recruitment for most of my career, mainly within in-house. Started with a few telecom companies. Spent a stint with eBay and PayPal, which is a large American software group. And I've been in agency recruitment for the past 5 years in New Zealand. So my current focus within the agency space is primarily within accounting and finance, and I cover work within professional services. So representing brands like PwC, Deloitte, as well as the other international mid-tier firms within accounting. So that's a bit more on myself. Thanks, Roy. Would you like me to continue?
Yeah, like like PayPal and eBay, your experience sounds like amazing. And because I have already added you on LinkedIn, I found that you don't only have New Zealand working experience, but you also work in Asia, including like China and Malaysia. So I think you must know our audience background and needs very well, given your experience, right?
Yes. And as well, culturally, my mom is Chinese as well.
Oh,
so
wow.
I somewhat understand a bit more of the background. Yep.
Sweet. All right, I'll stop here. And Harry, are you ready to start your presentation?
Definitely.
Cool, sweet.
So I think, thanks so much. I think we've got quite a bit to cover during tonight's webinar. So I think probably what we will do is, go over a bit more on the recruitment process. I think it's just to firstly understand what an initial steps would look like, including starting a plan and trying to come up with the right method of approach, understanding the application process in terms of, the various methods and tools, if you were to go directly or using an agency, direct approaches like cold calling. Pre-interview would really cover, what are the steps that you need to do before the interview, just to prepare yourself and to do a bit more research and planning. Of course, what to do and expect during the actual interview process. I imagine from the audience, some of you have, obviously are working right now, so that you've gone through the interview process. But I think there's still some really strong guidelines that can help you throughout, irrespective of which part of the career ladder you fall under. Part of the negotiation process, really, just to get an understanding on some of the market information that you can get in that's readily available, and just a continuous process as well. Just understanding, how do you ensure that you upskill yourself and, continuously monitor the market. So I'll start off really on understanding why a plan is really important. So I think probably some of you, may be currently in university and starting to plan your professional careers in New Zealand. So, really asking yourself, what's your long-term career goals? What do you wish to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? And also trying to understand what are the steps that you need to take to fulfill those goals. This is, I think, a really good question. Timings in terms of when should you start applying? Do you apply when you're in university, or if you're currently in a job, when is a good time to start applying or looking for work in the market? Should I take an unpaid internship? This is something probably may apply for those that may struggle in scoring their first role in New Zealand, as well as probably understanding a bit of the pros and cons between doing a contract or fixed term versus a permanent role. So at any stage of our presentation, feel free to take any notes, and if you've got any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them at the end of the of this webinar. I think probably for a lot of you, trying to draft or get a really good and detailed CV is something that you may be, there might be a few options out there that's available in the market. I'm sharing what I would probably, in my professional opinion, as a recruitment consultant would, look and expect for it to be a good or good looking CV rather. So probably really this is what we want to cover, and I'll go over it, bit by bit as well, but you'll see within the first page, you'll have an overview of your skills, and this is just a really high level summary in bullet point. So not really super detailed or like an essay, but just key points to describe your skills. The second key header would be your education background, really detailing, your course and the studies that you've been attached with, including your grades as well. And then that's when you go to the next section, whereby you include your professional experience. And you'll see I've broken it down to keep it really simple. So still covering the type of the role, the company that you were with, the period, meaning the start and the end date, as well as your responsibilities in bullet points. And you'll see that repeated for the second role and the third role and so forth. The other section in page 2 would be some of the extracurricular activities, some of the university studies that you've taken, anything that really, shows your corporate social responsibility, as well as your passion and hobbies. And it's only at the end when, you put in your contact details, obviously your mobile number for people to contact you on, your email, as well as your home address. Some key points as well, an ideal CV should be no longer than 2 pages long. It's really not standard practice to include a face picture in your CV. I'm sure you'd really want to show how good looking or how beautiful you are, but you just do not need to include that in your CV. And of course, you can choose to customize your CV. Obviously the picture, the image that I've shown here may seem very simple and maybe even a little bit boring. So you can include it, if you choose to include some borders or some graphics, but try to make it, keep it as a minimal so that it doesn't distract from the actual content that you're wishing to show. And then you don't need to include any referee details at this point. I think it's probably appropriate to use the reference or the referee section maybe once the interview and the recruitment process has begun. I'll cover that later as well. In the second section, in terms of, you've got your CV ready, you've typed it out, and this is when we'll cover the area surrounding a cover letter, but before we do so, one key point is just remember to do a spelling check. For me as a recruiter, obviously when we see that, perhaps the CV has been written with some grammatical or spelling errors, it's often not a really good impression. Ultimately, a CV is something that you use as a first calling point to represent yourself. So you just want to ensure that, you give out a really good impression from the very beginning. Okay, back to the cover letter. This is really a sample cover letter that, can be used and customized to your liking. So you'll obviously see there's your contact details as well as the employer's details, meaning the person that you're applying the job to. That's obviously the prospective employer. And then what you're really doing is you're basically doing an introduction at the very beginning, as well as explaining your interest in the role, So you obviously may not want to go into so much detail about your experience, given that you have included it in your CV. So the purpose of the cover letter is just to, showcase why do you wish to apply and some of the key value or benefits that you can bring to the job. That's when you really link again some of your skills and your experience, but once again, not super detailed. So just a very high level, brief introduction. And then of course, finally, summarizing and ensuring that you thank the prospective employee as well. Okay. We'll go on to obviously a bit of connection when it comes to the Rainbow community. And this is probably a question that, a lot of you may be asking, if you, choose to come out or not of the closet. Ultimately, I think that's a very personal choice, but one thing to remember is a lot of the larger companies often have a diversity affiliation. For example, like Rainbow Tech, I know PwC New Zealand, has that as a campaign. So it's always good for you to do your research as well, just to understand as a business if they affiliate and if they've got, any connection or, any diversity program. But one thing you also need to remember as a job seeker is it's illegal for companies in New Zealand to discriminate, so obviously they can't discriminate you based on your gender, obviously your sexual orientation, so that's something for you to keep at the back of your mind as you apply, but as to my earlier point, I think, you need to be obviously fairly comfortable and ready, and I think the only person who decides when you wish to come out or not is yourself, For me, in my experience working in New Zealand, in the 5 odd years that I've been in various agencies, I've never had any personal issues, so I think that's something that's, is quite reassuring for me compared to, say, other areas that I may have worked in the past. Okay, moving on, I think this is something that a lot of Kiwi or New Zealand businesses really look for when it comes to a prospective job seeker. So I've summarized, in my opinion, what really are the important traits, given that for me as a recruitment consultant, I work with both sides. Obviously, on one side, I work with the job seeker, the prospective employee. But then on the other side, I also work with the businesses, with the companies that are ultimately have the decision to decide if they hire someone or not. And I've listed down some of the key traits that I think that local businesses pay a lot of emphasis on. And that's obviously local experience, So it's something that is, almost a chicken and egg situation. So obviously for some of you on this call who are lucky to have some employment right now, then I think it's you guys are quite good in, that you've got local experience and you can continue with that. However, some challenges that new job seekers in the market may face is that, a common response would be you do not have any local experience, which is why I think that's why, I've suggested if you do get the opportunity, try to take on some internships or even voluntary experience, Obviously, it's not fun to work and not be paid, but I think you should tie it back to the long-term plans, So the long-term plans is to secure employment and remain long-term in New Zealand. Then some voluntary experience may be something that you wish to consider to add on to your CV, because it obviously allows you to familiarize yourself with the local way of working, as well as it shows a certain degree of initiative, okay? Other things which I think are top on the list for Kiwi businesses is the culture fit, So the word culture and culture fit is often used in many ways in New Zealand. And in my experience, having worked in Asia Pacific and in China and Malaysia and Singapore, and now working in New Zealand, I find that New Zealand businesses, they place a lot of emphasis on the culture fit, more so than the technical capabilities. So I think probably part of the research process that you do when you approach or have a plan in looking for a role is to understand or read up and see what the culture of a firm may possibly appear. And another way to obviously understand the culture or the way a firm would be running is during the interview process, because that's when when you're interacting with the businesses and with the directors or the senior management, and you'll know, if that's a place that you align to, But of course, from an employer's perspective, they put a lot of emphasis on your communication skills, which is, clearly something that they value in this country. Obviously loyalty is something that they look at, so it's about, trying to convince and to share with prospective employers, a certain degree of loyalty in terms of how long you plan to remain in the role. In my experience working with candidates, often those that, may be appearing to be a little jumpy, what this means is those that, don't stay in a job or role for too long, they may often face some challenges in scoring a role. And then the final area is obviously, understanding the technical, especially for certain fields, for example, like accounting, you need to be able to understand how local New Zealand tax is done, how GST is run, and so forth. Okay. Okay. This is obviously, some methods or various ways on applying. And I've listed a few different methods, and in my opinion, there's no one method is more successful than others. I think it's really on a case-to-case basis on, where you're at and the type of role that you're applying for. So below, or the images that you're seeing now, are the various ways on applying for a role and being successful at it. Okay, so obviously you've got the option of a job portal, which is online. You've got a recruitment agency, which is obviously the middle party that you can use to help to introduce you to jobs. You've got obviously networking, which I think is very important. And I know the first speaker had covered that, quite a wee bit as well. Even though I logged in 15 minutes at the end, and I don't really understand much Mandarin. I heard the word networking mentioned a lot. So I think obviously there's a lot of benefits there. Cold calling, internship and placements, which I obviously mentioned earlier as well, in terms of scoring your first local experience, as well as the voluntary aspect as well. Okay, so here's some examples of really ways on using the online tool, and that's LinkedIn, which is obviously a very powerful tool, especially for job seekers. And then you've got the traditional websites like Seek, as well as Trade Me Jobs. Okay. The other option is obviously recruitment agency. And I think in the New Zealand market, there are many different recruitment agencies of different sizes that you can choose to partner with. Ultimately, for a recruitment agency, the relationship, in my opinion, should be a long-term between the candidate and the consultant, because, it's about having maybe the consultant understand and work with you in terms of what are the key areas that you expect in a new role, and with the consultant finding the right match. So it's almost like, in some ways, dating someone or going on a blind date, and seeing the recruitment agent as being the matchmaker. Okay. And obviously, because the recruitment agent is rewarded based on a successful placement, then, they'll be obviously willing to work quite hard in getting you a job, or at least getting you some interviews. Okay. Networking, obviously, quite a lot of different events that you can go for, like a CA or CPA events, if you're a chartered accountant. And of course, trying to find some other events that are closely related to your industry or sector. Cold calling is something that may work as well to a certain degree. I'm not saying that this may be the best approach, but there are times that, depending on your individual situation, or perhaps maybe you have a company or an organization that you really admire and you wish to join, then you can always network and approach the key people, and how you do so is basically using a tool like LinkedIn. Say for example, you wish to join a leading accounting firm. By going on LinkedIn, you find out who would be the partners or the directors of the firm, and then based on that, you can always send them your CV as well. So that's what it means by really cold calling. It doesn't mean that you should go from door to door in person and knock on their door. It's more about approaching these individuals directly via email or phone. Okay, and I think the internship and placements we've covered before, and those key expectations or reasons there is just to get some local experience, but also to build your networks, to build your contacts on the ground. And I'm sure living in New Zealand, especially in Auckland or in other cities, it's a very small community. A lot of it is relationship based. So it's also about, starting and getting a point somewhere. Great, this is LinkedIn. You've got a nice picture of myself that, the photographer spent quite a lot of time on Photoshop to clean it up. But basically, jokes aside, this is really a chance for you to have your online presence, okay? So it's basically an area where you list down a bit more of your background, and if you look on the page on the left, there's a section which is a summary. In this case, obviously for me as a recruiter, I list the specific areas or fields that I recruit for. And obviously, at the bottom, there's a chance for me to drop my contact details for, people in the market to contact me. And then, on the other page is for you to list down your experience, both currently and in the past, So I'm currently a manager with quite a leading boutique recruitment agency where I head the recruitment for public practice. But I've also worked in a few international firms in New Zealand, including Hudson and Hayes in my previous roles. So if you look at this, what LinkedIn really is, it's a chance for you to put your CV online, okay? So obviously, you do also have the chance within LinkedIn to turn on an option for open for opportunities, okay? So what this means is by turning that option on, you are showing to the market that you're keen in exploring new opportunities. So when you've got, recruiters, or consultants like myself who use LinkedIn throughout the entire day, it gives you a good chance to, be contacted. And at least by being contacted, you are able to hear about opportunities, and roles that are out there. And a lot of times by, being contacted via LinkedIn or by a recruiter, you're getting contacted on roles that are not yet advertised or yet to be advertised on Seek or Trade Me. So what this means is basically you're beating the competition that's in the market. Okay. Another tool for LinkedIn is also, at least for me personally, just to show my networking skills, and going back on the power of networking. This image, obviously you can see the rainbow flag or the color theme was on diversity within accounting that was organized by CPA Australia. And if you see the main picture on the top, the gentleman on the left is an accounting or business advisory partner with RSM. Obviously he's part of the rainbow community. The lady next to me with the glasses, and you can obviously see she's got an EY t-shirt with the rainbow heart. She's the social champion for diversity for EY in New Zealand. And she's a tax partner in the team as well. and then myself and a fellow colleague of mine. So obviously it showcases that by being active in these networking events, you really get yourself, noticed, you build networks and contacts. And also, you get to eat some nice food and, free alcohol as well, which I'm sure is always a nice thing. Okay, preparation. And this is obviously, pre-interview. So I think, this is, say, you've gone through the process, you've put in your CVs across, and, someone contacts you from the company, and they would like to arrange a time to maybe interview you. Okay, so I think there's still a bit of preparation that needs to happen behind the scenes. Do your research. Read up on the company, read up on the field. So if you are, say, interviewing for a manufacturing company as a financial accountant or as an accounts payable officer, read up and see, what has been mentioned in the news or in industry journals about the company. Of course, understanding the role and the expectations is very important. Really getting to read up and understand what is the role and the opportunity that you are being interviewed for, so that during the time that you go for the interview and you're meeting the hiring managers, then you are able to provide good understanding. And of course, I think practicing the interview. I think everyone would be somehow nervous, in terms of this is maybe a new experience for everyone. But if you were to recall, one of the key things that New Zealand businesses pay emphasis and importance on would be the communication piece. So it's only by practicing the interview before, you can practice with your roommate, with your friend, with your boyfriend or girlfriend, and then just really trying to ensure that you nail the interview. And I think there's quite a lot of available material, on YouTube and on the internet to practice your interview style. And even if you look at it, there are styles that are more American sort of based type of interviews, or English or Australian styles. So there's lots of different options that you can do to practice, so that you're able to ace the interview when it actually happens. Okay, this is really going to being successful for the interview. How to really do a fantastic job. And this is really some feedback that I've gathered over the years. Remember, for me as a recruiter, I'm constantly speaking with the hiring managers. I'm constantly speaking with the candidates as well. So I get feedback on both sides. So I think I've, been able to list down some of the key success tips for you to remember. Some of it may be quite simple or basic or straightforward, but it's these small things sometimes that can make or break the interview. Obviously, dress code is important. I know in New Zealand people are quite relaxed. It may not be the most fashionable place in the world, I admit that, but I think for interview is you can never be too underdressed. So obviously, you would want to ensure that you dress appropriately, based on the company, based on the role, and based on the individuals that you're meeting. Okay, and sometimes for guys, especially for modern style, some people choose to wear a suit, suit matching trousers and a shirt with no tie. That's something you decide. For a lot of the accounting roles, I always encourage the gentleman to wear a tie. And of course, I think for ladies it's a bit more easy as well in terms of corporate interview dress. Okay. This is something that's quite interesting. Just really arriving on time. One thing I think that is quite important is if your interview is at 2 o'clock, for example, in the afternoon, you just want to be there maybe 5 or 10 minutes earlier, you know, because if your interview is at 2 p.m. but you show up at 1:30, it's often seen as a bit of an inconvenience for your hiring managers. You know, they might think that, oh, you know, this person, you know, even though in your mind you might be really eager and you want to go there early, but if you arrive way too early, it's also seen as a funny signal as well. Okay, so I think the best method really is to appear 5 to 10 to 15 minutes before. Of course, you know, because of Auckland and other areas, parking or traffic might be bad. So you can always wait in your car or, you know, wait in a cafe or something and then show up for the interview at the right timing. For direct applications, at least, I think it's important to have a few of your CVs printed out, you know, at least just in the event that you need to share coffee with the hiring manager. But of course, I think one thing that's very important is during the interview itself, please ensure that you're not referring to your CV. Okay, so you want to ensure that by, you know, not looking down or keep, you know, referring to a piece of paper during the CV, during the interview rather, I think that might be a bit distracting, which leads me to my point on body language. You know, obviously you want to ensure that you know, adjust your body language accordingly. You know, you want to ensure there's a healthy amount of eye contact, you know, and you want to ensure that you're constantly professional as well. But of course, you know, you want to ensure that, you know, by being maintaining your body language so that you still don't appear too stiff or too nervous, if that makes sense. The handshake piece is something that's quite interesting, and I think that's quite maybe something that is common within the Asian culture. But I find that, you know, whenever people do a handshake, you know, you want to ensure that it's maybe the grip it's firm or strong, but, you know, not too strong. You know, I think a lot of times, especially for Kiwis, they find it really funny, or, you know, or they're not used to it if the handshake is seen as being very weak or very soft. Okay, so there's something, you know, a tip for you to think of at the back of your mind. And then small talk, really. That's something that I'm sure, you know, for those of you who, you know, engage with Kiwis, you know, you go to university, you've got friends here. There's a lot of small talk that happens during at least from the first part and the last part of the interview, you know, so just be prepared, you know, just read up a bit more on, you know, current affairs and current events. You know, I've just included a picture of the rugby. You know, obviously that's a big thing for Kiwis, you know, but it doesn't mean that you need to talk about the rugby. You know, you just want to ensure that you've got enough general knowledge to talk about. But of course, you know, I think the main important thing is you want to stay away from things that are maybe a bit sensitive, like, you know, religion or politics and things along those lines. Okay. Finally, so assuming, you know, with all those tips that I've shared, you know, you then, you know, go through the entire process. And this is probably just some tips or some guidance really to understand a bit more on the offer process, you know, especially from a negotiation point of view. Market salaries, you know, understand really what the market is paying. And one way of doing so is there's a lot of information that you can download that's readily available. It's free for the New Zealand as well as Australian market, which allows you to drill down based on what would be the market salary based on the role, based on the sector, based on the location, So, obviously, if you do a bit of research online, you can compare with the different, recruitment agencies that publish the market salary on an annual basis. So obviously for now, the latest would be for 2019. And based on that, you can more or less benchmark and understand if the offer that the company is providing you matches what the market is paying. Okay, but one thing that probably you may wish to look at and consider is at times, companies may not necessarily be able to, negotiate on the salary, but you can look at other factors, perhaps, negotiating extra annual leave, or maybe flexible working hours, or, for example, like in this instance with COVID, you kind of know that a lot of people now are working remotely from home. Maybe you may be able to negotiate that as well, depending on the situation. Okay. One thing to be quite aware of is really constantly asking questions, and trying to understand what part of the process, and also understand where the negotiation is going towards, as well as, be quite clear with sharing your expectations, by sharing what you expect to be paid or expect to be remunerated, and not to wait till the very end, so that that there are no surprises, because in these cases, the surprises are often not very good if you leave it at the last minute. Okay. The last point really, and I think this is something that's quite big. You may wish to ensure that your contract is reviewed. You can maybe get a legal employment lawyer or a HR professional to review your contract. But if you also look on the New Zealand government's website, when it comes to standard employment agreements, there's some core information like number of annual leaves and other benefits that needs to be in every employment contract. So you may wish to do a bit of research as well before you sign and accept. So that's really brings me to the entire end-to-end really in terms of the recruitment process for New Zealand, sharing some of the guidance and the tips that I've gathered over the years. I think the last point really is by ensuring that you've gone through the process once, the next time and the third time becomes a bit easier, So it's also trying to understand, unique to your personal situation, and reflecting the process, say if you went through a process and you went for interviews, but you were maybe not successful, or you were number 2 in the process, just try to do a bit of post-mortem, really try to analyze, what you think could have been done better. And of course, if you were to use the services of a recruitment consultant, the consultant could have told you as well, because they're constantly speaking with the employers to get reasons on feedback, so that you can use that as reasons to improve. Similarly, if you were to apply directly, you can obviously email the hiring manager to get direct feedback or specific feedback on why were you not successful, so that by doing so you're able to be able to tackle and be successful in your future interviews. Okay, so that's really it on my side. I'm sure you've got quite a lot of questions that may have been sparked, may have sparked your thought processes. So always happy to answer them and as we speak. But I think I'll probably hand this back to Roy right now. Hopefully, Roy, you're not asleep yet.
Thank you so much, Harry. That was like brilliant. That was brilliant. And the presentation was amazing. I've learned a lot, and I'm feeling much more confident if I go back to the job hunting market again. Yeah, and actually, I think for instance, I made some mistake, in 2018 when I was job hunting, and I include my photo and include referees information in my CV, which is, obviously it was not appropriate. Yeah, I love the presentation. Thank you.
I mean, I think with the referee, the reason why you can include it or you don't have to include it is sometimes, the employers may contact your referees without you informing them in advance, or so by maybe removing it at the first instance, then you can also better control and decide when your referees are contacted, so that's probably the only reason. And I think with the photo, it's just not a common style, it's not whether it's right or wrong, but it's just that it's not traditionally used in New Zealand, especially because here we've got very specific requirements on not discriminating on race or age or gender. And obviously by putting a photo there, you're kind of, giving it away, so that's probably one of the key reasons why photos are not a common, method, even though I'm sure, you may want to show your best picture and your most handsome or beautiful picture that you've taken, but, hold and wait until you go for the interview.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I deleted my photo and my referee's information at the end, and I got a job.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
Thanks. So, all right.